have something a little special planned today. I went to Rick's College and then later BYU-Idaho, and I was talking to my teenage daughter about it the other day and describing to her some of the rules that I had to follow when I was there. And her reaction was wonderful. So I thought I would read through some of the policies and guidelines that students who attend BYU-Idaho have to follow. From BYUI.edu, under Student Life Policies and Guidelines, the first heading is camping and overnight activities. Overnight co-ed activities that are not university sponsored, such as spending the night together at the St. Anthony Sand Dunes, camping, staying in motels or cabins, and similar activities are prohibited. No overnight guests of the opposite sex are permitted at any time in single student housing. Remember, this is in a university setting. These are young adults who've gone away to college, and they are not allowed to, outside of university-sanctioned activities, go camping together. The next one is computer crime. Any person who knowingly and without permission accesses or attempts to access any campus computer, computer system, computer program, or network without prior authorization is committing computer fraud. Okay, that seems pretty normal. The next one is copyright. The use of university-owned computers, databases, servers, or the BYU-Idaho website or intranet for the storage, distribution, sharing, viewing, or transmission of copyrighted materials without permission is prohibited. The next one is curfew and quiet hours. Students should be in their own apartments by midnight Saturday through Thursday nights and 1 a.m. on Friday nights. Apartment visitors must leave in time to arrive in their own apartments by curfew. Quiet hours are from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. daily and all day on Sunday. This is actually a change from when I was going to Rick's and BYU-Idaho. They had a specific time that we had to be in and a specific time that visitors had to leave, and there was an hour between the two. So it made it really awkward. If I was hanging out with a boy, he had to leave my apartment at, say, 10 p.m., but neither of us had to be back to our apartments until 11 p.m. So then we had to find somewhere else to hang out for that hour in between, which meant the park down the street had a lot of students at it between the hours of, I think it was maybe 10 and 11. I can't remember the exact curfew. The next one is disruptive behavior. BYU-Idaho is committed to providing a safe and secure academic, cultural, social, and spiritual environment consistent with the Church Educational System Honor Code. Disruptive behavior is any behavior that adversely impacts the educational process and environment of other students, the community, or the administrative functions of the university on or off campus. I think this would probably then encompass someone who loses their faith while they're at BYU-Idaho and proceeds to share that they've lost their faith, because that could impact someone else's spiritual environment. The next one is drugs and alcohol. The use or possession of substances, drink, drug, chemical, or dangerous practice that is used to produce a high or another artificial effect that may harm your body or mind and associated paraphernalia is prohibited at all times. For the Strength of Youth, page 26. The university may disclose the violation to the student's parent or guardian. This can be made with or without the student's consent if students are less than 21 years of age at the time of disclosure. And just in case you were wondering, this also applies to people who can legally consume these substances elsewhere. So if you're going to BYU-Idaho and you stop believing in the Mormon church and you drink alcohol in your own home while a student, you can get kicked out of the university for that, even if you are of legal drinking age. And it doesn't even say you have to be on or near campus. So if someone sees you at a bar consuming alcohol, that could also be a problem. The next one is email. Students agree to not share their passwords, send spam mail, or any inappropriate material, including messages of a harassing or salacious nature, use their account for commercial purposes or any form of advertising. Students must not enter the email accounts of others nor send email messages posing as someone they are not. Students must not harvest and provide lists of BYU-Idaho email accounts to anyone. Good job. Entertainment and the media. For the Strength of Youth, they're going to reference the Strength of Youth quite a bit, but you have to remember that this is a 4-year university, and there are quite a few people here who are over 21 and married. It says, for the Strength of Youth teaches us to choose wisely when using media, because whatever you read, listen to, or look at has an effect on you. Select only media that uplifts you. Do not attend, view, or participate in anything that is vulgar, immoral, violent, or pornographic in any way. Do not participate in anything that presents immorality or violence as acceptable. Take care that your use of media and entertainment does not dull your sensitivity to the spirit or interfere with your personal relationships with others. Do not communicate anything over the internet or through text that would be inappropriate to share in person. Obey the laws that govern sharing music, movies, and other copyrighted items. The next category is firearms, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just give you the gist. It says BYU-Idaho prohibits the possession or use of firearms and weapons on property owned or controlled by the university, including on-campus and off-campus BYU-Idaho approved housing and at programs sponsored by BYU-Idaho which occur off of campus property. Under the laws of the state of Idaho, BYU-Idaho is permitted as a private institution to place limitations on the carrying of weapons onto its private property. Specifically approved and sanctioned BYU-Idaho programs such as archery courses and Badger Creek programs may use weapons under the guidance of trained instructors within the scope of their approved mission. Members of the campus ROTC units may possess and/or carry firearms or weapons with the firing pins or other actuating devices removed as part of official ROTC functions when authorized by the ROTC administrator. BYU-Idaho campus is a weapons-free environment. The next category is harassment, hazing, intimidations, or aggressive behavior. All forms of harassment, including but not limited to verbal, physical, mental, sexual, including sexual misconduct, hazing, intimidation, exploitation, or aggressive behavior that threaten or endanger the physical or emotional health and safety of others is in violation of the Honor Code. To report these types of behavior, contact the Student Honor Office or the Dean of Students office. What they don't mention here, let's say I go out with a boy after curfew and one of these things happens, and I go to the Honor Code office and I tell them I was sexually assaulted, I could also get in trouble for having been out after curfew. Next category, overnight guests. Because overnight guests often cause interruption and inconvenience to others, all such guests should be cleared with the apartment manager and agreed upon by the roommates. No overnight guests of the opposite sex are permitted at any time. Each tenant shall be responsible for any damage beyond reasonable wear and tear to the property of the apartment complex caused by the tenant, members of the tenant's family, or guests of the tenant. I believe that's the second time it said you couldn't have overnight guests of the opposite sex, which is kind of interesting to me because Gerardo Samano's Mormon Stories episode talks about how, as a gay student at BYU-Idaho, he was allowed to live with the person who he had a romantic interest in. And I won't spoil what he did. You'll have to go listen to the Mormon Stories episode, but it's fantastic. The next category is pets. No pets of any kind are allowed on campus or in approved housing. Pornography is the next one. Pornography in any form is not permitted. The use of pornography is a serious sin and can lead to other sexual transgressions. Pornography in all forms is especially dangerous and addictive. Avoid pornography at all costs. Remember, they are also talking to married couples and advising them what they can and cannot do inside their marital relationship. Right of access. BYU-Idaho is a private institution. Therefore, all grounds, walkways, roads, parking areas, and buildings owned by the university are private property. The university retains the right and legal authority to limit or otherwise restrict access to the campus for any reason it may deem appropriate. As an educational institution, BYU-Idaho affirms its right to guard or protect employees, students, and guests from interferences that would disrupt any class, program, activity, event, or permitted function. This includes stalking or other conduct that is threatening or disruptive to students, employees, or guests on campus properties. It also has included in the past people holding up pro-LGBTQ signs. Sexual misconduct. For purposes of this policy, sexual misconduct encompasses a range of behaviors that can create a hostile educational environment, including sexual assault and sexual harassment. This policy applies to sexual misconduct that is perpetrated by or against university students, university employees, participants in university programs, or visitors on its campus, whether the behavior occurs on or off campus. This policy also prohibits retaliation in connection with any reports of possible sexual misconduct that are made under this policy. This policy explains the investigation process used to adjudicate reported violations covered under this policy. BYU-Idaho is committed to promoting and maintaining a safe and respectful environment for the campus community. Sexual misconduct of any kind is contrary to the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Church Educational System Honor Code. I was personally sexually assaulted twice while a student at Ricks College that then became BYU-Idaho. The university prohibits sexual misconduct in all its forms, including but not limited to sexual harassment, sexual violence, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, sexual exploitation, indecent exposure, and all non-consensual sexual contact or behavior, collectively sexual misconduct, perpetrated by or against university students, university employees, participants in university programs, or visitors to its campus, whether the behavior occurs on or off campus. Definitions of prohibited conduct are explained in the university university's sexual misconduct policy, individuals who believe they have been subject to sexual misconduct should make a report, even if they have simultaneously been involved in other violations of university policy, such as the use of alcohol or drugs. Violations of university policy or the church educational system honor code do not make a victim at fault for sexual violence or other forms of sexual misconduct and may be addressed separately from the sexual misconduct report. So they're not saying you won't get kicked out if you got sexually assaulted when you were breaking curfew. They're just saying they'll prosecute it separately. Any person who becomes aware of sexual misconduct or needs assistance or information related to sexual misconduct may contact the Title IX coordinator. Single student approved housing. All single students under the age of 27 must live in approved housing unless they live at home with their parents. Only admitted students are eligible to live in approved housing beginning in their first assigned semester. Individuals enrolled in continuing education who are not admitted to a track are not eligible to live in approved housing. Students who wish to live with a relative must receive an exception from the Housing and Student Living Office to live outside of approved housing. Failure to comply with approved housing guidelines will result in a hold being placed on the student record. This hold may prevent a student from registering for classes, release a student from current classes, or prevent a student from acquiring transcripts. Individuals in the following categories must seek housing in the community market. A. Those who have not been admitted as BYU-Idaho students. B. Students who have been suspended for an honor code violation. C. Students on an academic suspension. And D. Single students with children. All students living off campus must provide the university with their current local street address while enrolled at BYU-Idaho. Students giving a false address are in violation of the honor code and subject to disciplinary action through the Student Honor Office, which may include suspension. Visitation guidelines by the opposite sex. Men and women may visit in apartments of the opposite sex beginning at 10 a.m. Visitors of the opposite sex are not allowed in bedrooms at any time. And then it says, see apartment living standards. And we will go to apartment living standards to the section Visitors of the Opposite Sex, where it says, men and women may visit apartments of the opposite sex as long as at least 3 people are present, 2 men and 1 woman, or 2 women and 1 man. Men and women may visit each other's apartments between 10 a.m. and curfew. Visitors of the opposite sex must remain in the living room and or kitchen, are not allowed in the bedrooms at any time, are not allowed to stay overnight in the apartment, are not allowed to use the shower at any time. When a public restroom is not readily available and with the consent of the roommates, visitors of the opposite sex may use the bathroom in the apartment. The second year I was going to Rick's, my brother was also attending, and one day he came over very emotionally distraught, and we began to have a private conversation, and for privacy reasons went and sat in my bedroom to have it. Well, one of my roommates didn't like that I had a boy in my room, which is against the honor code, so she reported me. Situations like that happen all the time. If you are not Mormon and have never been a member, I would love to hear how this compares to your college experience. And that's your information for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.